Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Dean Showalter, and I'm the host of the Airplane Owner Maintenance Podcast. So I want to welcome you back here. If you are a new listener, perhaps you don't know that much about me, so I just want to introduce myself and let you know that I am an A&P, IA, and pilot at our local airport, Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, SHD, and I work at Classic Aviation LLC there, which is the general aviation maintenance shop. And so I work there Monday through Thursday, and then on Fridays, I do other things, like record this podcast. So this week is kind of special because I have recently returned from the big air show, AirVenture, at Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So I wanted to do an episode where I am reviewing my experience from Oshkosh this year, and what an amazing thing it was. We were not able to have Oshkosh AirVenture last year in 2020 due to the virus, and so this year it was fantastic to be back again at Oshkosh, Wisconsin. 2 years ago was my very first time, and I was totally looking forward to getting back there again this year, and it was just a great experience. So I want to welcome you, whether you are a new listener or an old listener. I want to welcome you here. This is a place where we celebrate the small piston-powered airplanes and small turbine-powered airplanes, whatever kind of airplane you have, that has an amazing story attached to it. Those are the things that really light me up personally, is the stories and the people that are associated with the airplanes. So I thought this week I would go through, and what I've done is I've put together a slideshow. And so I am recording the audio for this podcast episode, and at the same time, I am going to record a slideshow, a narrated slideshow, and if it all works out, hopefully this will end up on my YouTube channel one of these days. So if you hear the podcast episode and you want to find the YouTube video, just Google my name, Dean Showalter, YouTube, or go to YouTube and Google my name and search my name, and it should pop up. So let's get started. AirVenture 2021. What an amazing experience. It started for me, well, it started before in lots of preparations, but the day that we left was the Monday morning of Oshkosh Week, and we had planned for my neighbor and friend, Manny Fisher, who lives really close to me. He was going to pick me up at my house at 4:30 a.m. So I didn't have another picture that I thought was more suitable than this one, so I just wanted to show who he is. Manny, if you get to the YouTube video and watch this, in this photo, Manny is over there on the right in the burgundy shirt. So he showed up at my house at 4:30 a.m. and I had my stuff out on the driveway ready to go. We piled it in his car, and then we drove a short distance over and picked up Sanford, who is the other gentleman in this picture here. And we picked him up, and we drove up to the Luray Airport, which is not quite an hour's drive away from us, where we were meeting up with 14 other, actually 3 of us and 12 other guys, I think it was, for a total of 15, and we piled into 3 airplanes and set out for Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It was a foggy morning there, and so this was the first airplane to take off. It was a Cessna Conquest. Paul is the owner and pilot of this airplane, and so he and several other guys got in this one, and they were the first ones to take off. The second one to take off was my friend Jeff in his Cessna 421, and he had some other guys with him in that airplane as well. And then the third airplane was the one that I had the privilege of riding along in as a passenger, and that was in this TBM 940. What an incredible airplane. So we took off, and a couple hours later, we were approaching into Oshkosh over Lake Winnebago. Well, back to our takeoff from Luray, here's a photo of the fog is clearing and the sun is starting to come out. And then in the next photo here, we've got where we have quickly popped out above the overcast and we're flying along above the clouds in the sunshine, and it was absolutely amazing. I was absolutely thrilled on this trip to partway through, the offer was made for me to sit in the co-pilot seat in the right front there, but I declined on that because I wanted my friend Manny to be able to experience that. And so if you ever get a chance to look at this photo, I love this photo because I had Manny turn around. He gave me a nice big smile. So he is experiencing the co-pilot seat in that TBM 940, and what an incredible experience. I think he really enjoyed that. So here we are, coming in over Lake Winnebago, viewing the town of Oshkosh off to the right as we are approaching in to land on runway 27. So we landed, and very quickly we're unloading the TBM 940 and the other airplanes and getting our stuff over to the house that we were staying at. And then before long, we were over to the air show grounds, got all our entrance tickets and the things we needed, got inside there. And so I thought I would just go through and share with you some of the personal highlights from my personal trip this year. Here's a photo of the Samaritan's Purse, one of the jets that they operate, the Samaritan's Purse International Relief Organization. And I waited in line one day with Manny, and we took a tour through this airplane, and it was just amazing. Their goal is to have one of these airplanes on site at a given location within 24 to 48 hours after a disaster has happened. And not only do they get this airplane on site, but they also set up a mobile hospital unit to take care of people. Just an inspiring endeavor that they are a part of. I got a picture of one of the AirVenture signs, and right there, the slogan below AirVenture, it is so true what it says. It's the world's greatest aviation celebration, and the sign there is for Oshkosh 2021. Over to the side there is the Goodyear blimp. The Goodyear blimp was flying all around throughout the week at Oshkosh, and that thing just is so amazing to me because it is so huge, and it kind of maneuvers slowly, and yet one time I got a fairly close-up view of it, and I was just amazed at the flight control surfaces on that massive blimp. And I would love to ride in that thing someday, but I don't know if I'll ever have that opportunity or not. Here's a photo of one of the places. This is just one of many views like this where you see airplanes row after row after row, and tents after tents after tents next to the airplanes of people camping. Now, that seems like a bit of an inspiring thing, maybe to a point, but when you think about the possibility of rain and storms as we had one night, and then the other thing of just lack of air conditioning, it did honestly make me very thankful for the house that we were able to rent. And so right across the road from the airport is a great situation that our group has somehow managed to be a part of for the last few years. And that is, there is a couple who leave for the week of AirVenture, and they rent their house out to us. So that just worked out as a great base for us to operate out of. And I've got a photo here of some of the guys that I was with in the house there, and they were there one morning. All of us were there, and what had happened was my wife had prepared a breakfast casserole setup for us. So she had made all the stuff and prepared it so that all I had to do was put the stuff together the night before in these two large casserole dishes and get up early and bake that, and it was a great hit. So if you're ever able to see the photo, I've got a photo of some of the guys that were enjoying the breakfast there together. And then back over to the hangar. In Hangar C, there is A, B, C, and D. The huge hangars, 4 of them, just a portion of what happens there at AirVenture, but that's where a lot of the vendors are set up. And one of those vendors is my friends at Oasis Scientific. I've become friends with these people, and I have had a relationship with them where I help them to market and sell their borescopes, because they sell the Vividia VA400 and a bunch of other borescoping products, but I have the VA400, and in fact, they've got a new and improved one out with better. It's got a better camera in it, and I bought one of those, a second one this year. So at some point, I might sell my old one. I'm not totally sure on that right now, but I did buy a new one this year. So in the photo, we've got Michael and David and Cortland. So they had a really great setup there. And one of the things I really love that they do is they bring 2 aircraft cylinders and set them up at their booth so that people can actually get their hands on a borescope and poke it down in spark plug hole and look around inside there. So it's a really great arrangement they have, and I really appreciate these guys. They have been just great people to work with, so I appreciate them so much. One day I went over to the AOPA tent and listened to a talk by Richard McSpadden. If you're not familiar with him, he was the leader of the Thunderbirds group years ago, and I would have loved to see them fly. I don't think I ever saw them fly in person, but Richard is just an amazing individual, flight instructor, communicator, and he gave a great presentation there one day in the AOPA tent. I also snagged a photo over in front of the convention, the Oshkosh convention sign with all the flags on it next to the runway. So I got a picture of that one day. I wanted to make sure I captured that memory. And then the control tower. Definitely had to get a picture of the control tower. And it's got the sign right up there on the side that says the world's busiest control tower. I just think that's very fascinating that for 1 week out of the year, the little town of Oshkosh, Wisconsin at Whitman Field has the busiest control tower in the world. Right there in the middle of all the activity was Boeing Plaza, and once again, the UPS massive 747 jet airliner was sitting there for display, and they also gave tours through the airplane. 2 years ago, I waited in the line for quite a long time to get a tour through that airplane, and so since I did that 2 years ago, I did not go through it again this time, but definitely enjoyed walking past it and taking a look at it. I enjoyed taking pictures of many airplanes that I found amazing and beautiful, and one of the ones I stopped to get a photo of was one that it's pretty much my perfect color combination for an airplane. So I'm looking at a Cessna 206 on floats. It's got the Whipline 3000 floats, and it's like a deep, almost navy blue with white and very nice accents on it, and it's just absolutely an incredible airplane. I think that would be so amazing to fly an airplane like that in a place like Alaska or somewhere similar. One day, we went over and saw the display of the Beechcraft Denali airplane. That is going to be one incredible airplane, and I got to sit up in the cockpit of this mock-up fuselage that they had. And as I looked around at the avionics panel and the switches and all the way, the layout of the whole thing, it just seems like it has been laid out so well. It just reminds me of an iPhone. Nice and simple, and everything seems to make sense of the location that they put things in. So here I am sitting in the cockpit of that, just looking around and enjoying what I'm seeing there. There's the outside of this mock-up fuselage for the Beechcraft Denali. It'll be interesting to see how that whole thing works out here in the next few years. And then over in the forum area, I took a picture of the schedule on a couple of these because my first presentation that I gave was on lapping valves and saving cylinders. We talked about lapping exhaust valves and how we've been able to save quite a number of cylinders from premature removal, and in some cases, this tends to be a really good option. So over in Workshop Classroom C, right there on July 29th, I gave a presentation and had just a great time with the people that showed up. My friend Manny took a bunch of pictures for me, for which I was very grateful, and he estimated that there were probably about 75 people that came out for that one, so we just had a grand time. Not only did we talk about it and show the slides, but then we also had an actual airplane cylinder there, and my friends Kenny and Jeff, after it was all over, they actually lapped a valve. And then 2 days later on Saturday over in Workshop Classroom A, we had another one that was more focused on borescoping exhaust valves. So that was really fun also. Another airplane that got my attention that I took a photo of was this blue and silver Pitts aircraft. What an incredible airplane. Kind of a similar color to that Cessna 206 on floats I took. And then, of course, Mike Patey's new airplane, Scrappy, was there. That one definitely gathered a lot of attention around it because it's such an out-of-the-ordinary airplane with its huge tires, the beefed-up landing gear, the incredible wing arrangement and design with all the extra features on it. the ridiculously looking, amazing wide blade, 4-blade propeller on it. So that was really fun to see. And then over by the ABS, American Bonanza Society tent, they had another V-tail Bonanza on display this year, the featured airplane for this year. And then they had their tent where they also welcomed people and gave out information about the organization. One of the finest small airplane type organizations that is in existence today, I do believe. I'm a member of the ABS, and I really appreciate the work that they do. One day I got to catch up with my friend, David Inglesby. He's from Georgia. He and his wife, Debbie, are from Georgia, and I remember them from years ago because I went to school with David at Moody Aviation in Tennessee, and I had not seen him for years and years, and then finally here at Oshkosh 2021, I got to see him again and catch up with him. He flew up there with a friend and flight student of his. One of his students bought a Cessna 206, and they flew up there together, and so that was just really great to catch up with my friend David Inglesby. Another photo I got of the airplane grounds, I'm looking out right now over the area where the RVs were parked, and I remember 2 years ago, I came away with such a huge appreciation for these guys that build these experimental airplanes. And of all the ones out there, for some reason, the RVs they just really fascinate me. And so I got a photo of just a huge field full of these and perhaps some other kinds of airplanes. Here's another really interesting one. It's like maybe a 3/4 scale P-51 Mustang. And the thing that really got my attention about this was the slogan on the side of it. It says, "Blood, Sweat, and Years." So I'm assuming that was what it took for them to build that airplane, was a lot of blood, sweat, and years. Here's a photo that my friend Manny took for me during the valve lapping presentation. So my two friends, Jeff and Kenny, are up there in the front of the room because I had them come up and help me give out some t-shirts. I had some airplane owner maintenance t-shirts made, and so I wanted to give out a few of those, so that's what we did. And then they are also the two guys who, after the seminar was over, they got right in the middle of the room on a table and they lapped a valve in a cylinder that we had taken along for this purpose. And so that just really worked out great. That just makes my day looking at that photo and seeing all these guys engaged with them around this process. So I think it's something that people are very interested in. It does not always work, the valve lapping procedure, but when it does, it can be a really good thing. There are precautions to be aware of, and certain conditions make a cylinder a good candidate for lapping a valve, and in other situations, they are not a good candidate. So it's just important to make a good evaluation with your local A&P to make sure that this is a procedure that may actually be a good option. Another day, I got to catch up with a new friend of mine, Mike Beasley. I met him by phone maybe a couple of years ago or so after Oshkosh 2019 because he became the new leader of the Canard Wing type airplane group. And so this year, I noticed that Mike was giving a seminar, and I decided I think I'm going to go try to surprise him. So I went over to where his seminar was going to be, and right before he started, I was able to meet him, say hi to him, and snag a photo with him. So Mike is just a great guy, and I appreciate being able to know him. Another day, I was back over in the AOPA tent again because they give a lot of great presentations there. And I went to hear a flight instructor named Jason Miller. Perhaps you recognize that name from his podcast and his YouTube channel about the finer points. He teaches the finer points of flying because there's all the normal logistical stuff that you talk about, but this particular talk in the AOPA tent this day was something about 10 things every pilot should know. And so it was a list of things that go beyond just the typical things that are required to know by the FAA and digs deeper into some concepts and some ideas that will help to make us safer pilots that are in addition to the basic information. Like, for example, one of the things he talked about was looking around and seeing what the professionals do and do that. Because if you look at situations like the airlines and the military, and professional aviation situations, there are far fewer accidents than in general aviation overall. And so it's important for us to take a look at that and say, okay, what do the airlines do, and what can we do in small general aviation airplanes, even private piston-powered airplanes, even experimental airplanes? What can we do to incorporate some of those practices so that we can also fly safer? It was just a great presentation. Another day, I went over to one of the engine manufacturers, and I'm trying to remember if this was Lycoming or Continental. Maybe I probably don't want to incriminate either one of them. So it was one of those. But what got my attention was the safety wire on one of the oil filters on the display engine. I looked at it, and there was a gap between the safety wire and the can as it went around the end of the safety wire, as it went around the end of the oil filter housing. And I could take that wire and wobble it back and forth. It was so loose, I would definitely not be happy with this if I was personally installing this safety wire on an airplane. And here, take a look at this. I've got this little video of me wobbling it back and forth. So take a look at this. That was a video of me wobbling the safety wire back and forth on that oil filter. So that was an interesting thing. I guess it is a Lycoming engine. Yeah, that's what it looks like, Lycoming. Sorry, Lycoming. Another day, I went out a couple times. I went out and took a run because to me, it's just kind of a relaxing, therapeutic thing that I like to do is go run and listen to podcasts. So I did that, and here's a photo of the beautiful view out over the train track and then out over the water of Lake Winnebago beyond. So that was really fun. On Saturday at the Borescoping seminar, this woman named Shelley came to that seminar, and it was very interesting talking with her. She flies a Mooney airplane, and she had a really great question, I remember, in the Q&A time afterwards there. So it was great to connect with all the people that came there, but I especially found it interesting that Shelley showed up there because she was one of the few women that came to a seminar that was mostly full of men. So Shelley, it was great to meet you, great to have you there, and I wish you the very best with your aviation endeavors. This is the Saturday seminar, Borescoping. We talked about borescoping exhaust valves, and one of the people there told me later that the time when the light really came on for him, or something that really helped him to understand the whole thing of a burning exhaust valve, was when I told my popcorn popper story. So I'm not going to go through that whole thing here, but just the very brief version of it was years ago, we have this popcorn popper, and the old one has probably been thrown away because I abused it. I didn't use it properly, and I burned the side of the bowl because I would try to fill it too full, and the steam came rushing out around the edges, and over a period of time it burned the edges. And anyway, I likened that to sort of the way that a leaking exhaust valve will let those hot gases come around the edge of the valve, and it does not allow it the proper cooling in that area because it doesn't have contact, but then also just that rushing effect of that torching effect around that edge tends to burn it up. So we talked about that and a bunch of other things. Here's one of the photos. This is my what I consider my famous photo now because it made it into one of Mike Bush's articles years ago in the Sport Aviation magazine, and then also on a couple of pages in his engine book. So in this one photo, I'm explaining the burning side of this exhaust valve and what it looks like on this picture. I also met a guy named Steve at one of the seminars, and it was just really great to meet him because he is developing an out-of-the-ordinary airplane maintenance training program. And so I need to get in touch with him and talk about that a little more because we spoke very, very briefly about possibly doing some kind of work together. So it's in the very early stages of that, and I'm very interested to see what may come out of that contact. So, Steve, it was great to meet you. I appreciate it so much. You can't, if you're only on the audio, you're going to have to go to the YouTube video of this to really get the full effect of this one. I have a picture that I took with a young man that reminded me of J.P. Sears. Now, maybe you do or maybe you don't know who this young man is. He's a guy on YouTube who makes these hilarious videos. I find them very comical. But I saw a guy at Oshkosh that reminded me of J.P. Sears. And so one day I stopped and talked with him a bit, and I asked him, has anybody ever said that you remind them of J.P. Sears? And he said, oh, yeah, they have. And I was about to walk away. In fact, I had walked away, and I thought, this is too good to pass up an opportunity for a photo with him. So he was very gracious to let me get a photo with him. And if you are a J.P. Sears fan, or if you have seen him and find any of his videos interesting, then be sure to go and take a look at this video on YouTube that I put together and see if you think he looks a little like J.P. Sears as well. Another guy that stopped me one day walking around the grounds there at AirVenture was my friend Dan. He is from Lynchburg, Virginia, and he brings his airplane to us for maintenance at Classic Aviation. So it's just amazing to me how I inadvertently run into people from back home, all the way at Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Among the hundreds of thousands of people, I just find that amazing. It's always fun. Here's a photo I snagged on the trolley one day. Manny Fisher, my good friend, and I were riding along, and this woman sat down on the other side of me, and she and her husband have been enjoying aviation together for many, many years. They have one of those little lake amphibian airplanes, and they've just done a lot of flying adventures all over the place. And you could tell that she was just so full of aviation life, aviation adventure. And so I asked her if it'd be okay if I snagged a photo there, and so she was gracious to let me do that. One day, Manny and Sanford and I went over to the Seaplane Base, and one of the things that we did there was we went over to a tent where Samaritan Aviation had a tent set up, and they were telling people about the work that they do in Papua New Guinea. So we met this couple there, and before it was all over, Sanford had made a connection with them, and he had checked into providing a borescope for their mechanic, because they operate Cessna 206s, and so Sanford wanted to be a part of that, and so we left there and went back over to talk with the Borescope people, and then Michael from the Borescope display there, he was also interested in being a part of that. So anyway, that whole thing is in the works to get a borescope in the hands of their mechanic, and I was just amazed at the generosity both of Sanford and of Michael with Oasis Scientific. So you guys are amazing. This is the photo that Manny and Sanford and I got over there at the Seaplane Base. If you are ever at Oshkosh and you want to have a little bit of a relaxing diversion, the Seaplane Base is a short bus ride away from the main grounds, and it's got a whole different feel to it. It's very, very relaxing, a nice place. There's shade, there's trees. We watched a few airplanes take off up out of the water. We ate lunch over there, so it was just a great thing to see. And then back over at the main grounds, I took a bunch of photos and some videos of the air show that was happening from time to time throughout the week, but oftentimes I find that my video footage of the air show is really not that great. It just really is hard to capture on video the real life effect of what the air show looks like. But this particular one to me was different. So take a look at this one video that I got of the air show. That one was one of the best ones that I think when I went back through and watched my videos, I was really happy with how that one turned out. If you have ever heard of Jessica Cox, you probably have a great respect and admiration for her. She is the young lady who learned to fly with her feet, and I discovered too late that she was going to be at Oshkosh, and so apparently she was there at her airplane one day, but I did not get over there to see her. I would have loved to have met her if I would have had that opportunity, but here is her yellow and white Air Coop, and I love some of the features that it has on it. On the side it says, "Look, Ma, no hands." And then over on the side of one of the tails, it has what I assume to be her logo. It is a J, probably for her name Jessica, and then that J, though, is sort of made into the shape of a foot because she flies with her feet. And so her airplane was on display there at Oshkosh, and I just think her story is so absolutely inspiring. Chick-fil-A was there selling chicken sandwiches and other things, and if you see this picture sometime, they did a lot of business there. My friends Jeff and Kenny, Jeff on the left there, Kenny on the right, since they helped me out in that one seminar, I gave them t-shirts for airplane owner maintenance, and so one day when they were over in the FBO, they apparently snagged a picture with them and their t-shirts. I did not know they even did this until one of them sent me this picture, so that was pretty cool. And then finally, Sunday, it was time for us to go home. So several of us that were going to leave in the TBM 940 were out there. We had one guy that we were waiting on, and so we weren't able to hop in the airplane and go just yet, so we went over to the FBO, and I love some of the features that they have in this FBO at the little airport at Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Whitman Field. Welcome to Oshkosh. It has a big banner over top the area there, and it's basically a miniature museum inside this airport because there's a glass case that tells a lot of the history about the Experimental Aircraft Association and how it got started and how it progressed through the years. So that was just an incredible thing to be able to spend a little bit of time reading through some of that stuff. And then finally, we were on the way home, took off in the TBM, flew up to, I think it was 31,000 feet. And then on the descent, coming back down, we actually got up to a 400 knot ground speed. That was totally and completely amazing. Finally, we were back on the ground at Luray, Virginia, and we got everything unpacked and hopped in Manny's car, and he took me back home. And it was back home again in Virginia, time to go back to work the next day. But if I had to go back to work the next day after a great week of vacation, this was a fantastic airplane to be going back to work on. It's a Bonanza that I was doing some specific squawk repairs on and also adding a standby alternator system on this airplane. So that's largely what I've been working on the last couple of weeks is this airplane. And I've been very, very impressed with this B&C Specialties standby alternator system. And the tech support has also been great because at the very end, the other day, I was testing the system according to their checklist, and there was some things that I was not quite sure about, so I called, and their tech support guy called me back and was just super helpful. I was very, very happy with that whole situation. Also, in the first week that I was back after Oshkosh, it was very, very interesting because I had one of the local guys that he and his son fly airplanes, experimental airplanes, and so they landed one day in two different red and white airplanes that they have built, and I'm sorry, but I can't remember the models of these airplanes, but I've got a photo of both of them. Here's one of them, and then here's the other one. It's Super Stole. Super Stole is that one. So that was just a great thing to come back to and have them come into our airport to visit the local avionics shop after I got home from Oshkosh. And the reason I find this fascinating is because Oshkosh is all about promoting general aviation and sport aviation and aviation of all types, supporting people in their endeavors to fly safely and fly with enthusiasm and live the adventure that is small general aviation. So it was just great to have them land there, and one of the great things about it is the weekend before Oshkosh, they had hosted our local EAA group out at their local grass strip not too far away from here. I was not able to attend that because I was in serious preparations for going to Oshkosh and getting my presentations together and all those things, but I hope they will do that again. And if they do, I really hope that I can make it out there. One last thing I wanted to share with you was just the other day, John Telfian from Rhode Island stopped in to see me, and here he is with me in front of his Glass Star airplane. He stopped in because he had come to one or maybe both. He came to both of my seminars in Oshkosh. And so it was just really great to meet John, and he told me that he might stop in and see me, and sure enough, he did. He was coming through the area, and he was on his way back home to Rhode Island, so he stopped in, and I got to see his airplane, really nice airplane, got to hear the engine run, and it actually runs quite nicely, actually. Here we go. Here's a video of him taxiing out. Let's see what it sounds like. That was just cool to see his little airplane, and he had all his stuff packed in the back. And so, John, thank you so much for stopping in to see me. I really do appreciate it. So that is a general report of my personal Oshkosh trip this year, and I would just encourage you, if you've never made the trip to Oshkosh, Wisconsin for the AirVenture Air Show, consider going one year. If not next year, then maybe you can make a plan for the following year or another one. But sometime during your aviation life, if you love aviation, you would probably love AirVenture at Oshkosh. It is absolutely the most amazing aviation event that I have ever seen in my life. So to wrap up, thank you so much for listening to the audio. Thank you so much if you've watched the YouTube video, and I will hopefully, as many of you as possible, see you in Oshkosh in 2022. So to close out, I just want to also remind you that you can go over to my website, airplaneownermaintenance.com, and see what resources might be there. I always try to put some good pictures and show notes with the podcast episodes. And then also, I've got links to my video training courses. If you need to learn how to do excellent safety wiring, I've got a link there that you can go and purchase that course, and it's a self-paced course that you can go through and learn all the information about excellent safety wiring for airplane owners. And then I've also got one on servicing landing gear shock struts that we recently released. You can check that one out as well. And then as far as other resources, if you need help with anything like reviewing or evaluating your Borescope photos that you take of your especially exhaust valves, then I would be happy to do that for a reasonable fee, and I've got information about that also on the website. It's on the store page. All this information is on the tab that says store. So I'd be happy to review your Borescope photos. I also do one-on-one consulting. You can sign up for that. And then the third thing that I offer as well is review of maintenance records. So if you are looking at purchasing an airplane and the maintenance records are available at a given location online, which typically they are, then if you want someone like myself who has read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of maintenance records, if you'd like somebody like me to go through them and take note of important things that I see that you might want to be aware of, possible things that you could use as negotiating tools on the price that you're going to pay, but also just things to keep in mind about whether you should or should not buy that airplane. If you'd like to sign up for that service as well, just go to airplaneownermaintenance.com and click on the store page. All that information is there. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me for the episode. I do appreciate all the ways that you guys inspire me to be a part of an adventure that is related to aviation. It always amazes me how many new growing adventures there are to be experienced out there. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate you being a part of this podcast. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.